Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a reading wrap-up of what I read in February 2019. It wasn't the heaviest reading month of my life, but I did read some really good books in it, so I'm going to share all 4 of them with you. So the first book that I read actually technically started in January, but I started on January like 28th or something and finished it in February. So yeah. And that is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, a counterintuitive approach to living a good life. This book is a self-help book about basically just kind of how to live your life without so much like anxiety and worry and stress, and how to kind of achieve your goals and kind of succeed and live a good life in a kind of more counterintuitive way than most self-help books kind of tell you how to do it. I've had this book recommended to me 1,000 times, like by my therapist, by friends, by the internet, by a lot of people, and it was really good. It actually was really good. It was very eye-opening to the fact that we put a lot of energy into things that don't deserve our energy. I don't know, just the way that Mark Manson writes this book is very like no nonsense, very tough love, very like you're not gonna hear it from anyone else kind of writing, and yeah, I really liked it, and yeah, it's definitely given me perspective on a couple different things. So the next book I don't actually have with me anymore because I had to take it back to the library, but that would be The 100 by Cass Morgan. This is a book that is actually gotten adapted into a CW special, or not special, just a TV show, which I heard was good and had it recommended to me on Netflix a bunch of times, but I never actually knew anything about it. Basically, it's just about your classic tale where, you know, something terrible happened to the Earth, and so we had to flee into space. And we kind of come across humanity in the book just as they are trying to figure out whether they should try to go and recolonize Earth or not. And so they decide that the best way to handle it is to take a bunch of, basically, if you commit a crime on the space station that we're all living on, you basically get executed unless you are under 18. And if you're under 18, you basically get confined, I think they call it, until you are 18, in which case you are usually executed at that point, but you get a retrial. And so they decided that they're going to take a bunch of their confined kids, basically, because like I said, at 18 you're not confined anymore. You either get released or you get executed, and send a bunch of them down to Earth to see, like, is it still, apparently there was like some sort of like nuclear war, and so they're sending them down to see if it's still irradiated, and they decided to send a bunch of teenagers down, which is obviously extremely unrealistic, but it was actually a pretty good book. I really enjoyed it. There's a ton of things happening in it. It can get kind of confusing because there's not only are there a lot of characters, but it kind of like switches back and forth between their perspectives a lot, so it can get a little confusing, like who's who and whose relationship is with who and stuff like that, but it does a pretty good job of keeping it straight. The characters are pretty uniquely named, so it's not that bad. I didn't have a lot of high hopes for it, I'll just say that, and then it was a lot better than I thought. The next book I read is actually nonfiction, and that is I'll Be Gone in the Dark, One Woman's Obsessive Search for the Golden State Killer by Michelle McNamara. So Michelle McNamara was a investigative journalist person, true crime writer, blogger, and wife of Patton Oswalt, whose name you probably are more likely to recognize. And she unfortunately passed away in 2016, and this is her posthumously published a book that she wrote about the Golden State Killer, who is a serial killer and rapist who basically stalked Sacramento and the surrounding areas throughout the 70s, and is attributed to more than 50 rapes and more than 10 murders. And so she, as a true crime enthusiast, kind of got obsessed with trying to catch him because it's still unsolved to this day. She kind of got a little obsessed with trying to figure out who he was, you know, how he got away for so long, trying to just like put together the clues that maybe investigators might have missed, try to figure out clues that maybe weren't viable at the time, like DNA, and stuff like that. And so this is kind of like her adventure through that, but it's not just that, it's also almost like a memoir, because a lot of it is about her and her you know, obsession with true crime and what her life is like as someone who is kind of obsessed with true crime and is trying to solve, you know, cold cases. But yeah, I found it to be very, 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 very well written. It was really interesting. I am a huge true crime person. I love true crime stories, and I'm obsessed with cold cases as well, so for me this was a very interesting read, just to like see all of the clues kind of laid out and kind of all the places where police maybe blundered or where they figured something out but then it didn't pan out. And yeah, it was really, really good. If you like true crime, I definitely recommend it. It's a terrible loss that Michelle passed away when she did, and she, you know, won't get to see him caught or, you know, see the mystery solved really. So it's very upsetting, but at least we have this book, which is 99%, well, not 99, probably like 80% her own writing, 10% or 15% excerpts from other writings she's done, so other blog posts and other articles that she's written, and then there's a little bit at the end written by her two main researchers that they wrote after she had passed away. But yeah, highly recommend if you are into true crime. And the last book I read, which I technically finished on March 1st, is called The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This book is fascinating. It is very interesting. So basically it takes place in a world where everyone can hear everyone else's thoughts at all times. There's no way to keep your thoughts private in your head. They just get broadcast out to the world. And since everyone's brains are doing that at once, it just turns into what they call the noise, because it's just like constant barrage of like everyone around you's thoughts. So basically it starts there, and there's a main character named Todd, and he is living there with his dog, Manchi, and his family. There's only men who live in the town, and he doesn't really know why, and he doesn't really know much about the history because the town is kind of a religious ruled area that they don't talk about the past at all or do any learning. He doesn't know how to read throughout the entire book. But yeah, basically he discovers that there's this huge secret in his town that he has been, you know, shielded from his whole life up until now, and he ends up going on the run from the town. And so it's a very, very interesting story. I thought it was going to be okay. I was kind of reading it, I'll go over what each of these books were in the PopSugar reading challenge as well. But I was basically reading it for that. It was a book that was supposed to be turned into a movie in 2019. It's actually not anymore. Apparently they pushed it back to 2020, but I'm still counting it because when I googled it, it said 2019. But anyways, it was getting turned into a movie, and so I thought I'd give it a shot, and it was really, really, really fascinating. I found it really like interesting and compelling, and there's 2 more books in the trilogy, and I'm 100% going to read them. I haven't added them to my list yet, but they are going on my to-read list, and I really hope my library has them. So yeah, I definitely recommend this one. So yeah, let me just go back quickly over what each of these books were for the PopSugar reading challenge in case you're following along. So The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F by Mark Manson was to fulfill the task to read a book whose author has both of their names start with the same letter, so Mark Manson. The 100 was to read a book that takes place in space. I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara was to fulfill the task to read a book that was posthumously published. And The Knife of Never Letting Go was, as I mentioned, a book that was to be turned into a movie in 2019. Turns out it's not going to be turned into a movie until 2020, but I'm still counting it because when I googled it and took out the book and started reading it, it said 2019. Dang it. So there you go. And so yeah, those are the 4 books that I managed to read in February. I guess it's a bit of a shorter month, so I'm going to give myself credit for that. But yeah, if you have any book recommendations that you would like to drop in the comments, please feel free to. If you're following along in the PopSugar challenge and you have recommendations specifically for tasks I haven't completed yet, that would be bonus points. But yeah, other than that, I will see you guys in the next video, and until then, later days.